as Philly organizer. She's the one that's going to be leading the next pledge program. You'll probably still see some familiar faces there because you might sign up to be a mentor. I don't know. But Farah will be leading that, and she's actually going to lead our panel discussion today. She's going to introduce our amazing panelists that are going to help talk through some issues about living in a non-vegan world and give you some great tips from their experiences. Take it away, Farah.
Hey, thank you, Tina. Hello, everyone. Hi. Hi. Today. Yes. So happy that you've been on this journey, and so this is now week 4, right? Everything's good? Very happy? All right. So we're gonna start the panel discussion, and let me invite the panel participants. Please join us. Yeah. Elena? Yeah, I think we're looking for it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Please have a seat. So let's all welcome these wonderful panelists. Yes. So I'm going to go through their bios just to give you an idea of who we have here. So Elena, to your far right, is the creative mind behind Yoga Tree, a self-care space for exploring plant-based foods, mindfulness meditation, and yoga practice as a means to create your best life. She has dedicated more than 14 years to the health and wellness space and is a full-time wellness success coach. Known for her honest, down-to-earth approach to self-care, she is highly sought out by folks who want to feel good, loving the life they live. And then we have Richard Rogers, who is a whole food, plant-based, vegan running enthusiast who combines running and racing with meditation and yoga for the betterment of life and daily well-being. Richard is the director and organizer of Philadelphia Veg Fest, and for those of you who don't know the Philadelphia Veg Fest, now you know. It's a wonderful veg fest, and we're so grateful that he runs it. And he has revived the Philly vegan drinks Meatless Mingo. He endeavors to spread awareness and practice the whole food, plant-based vegan lifestyle throughout the local and greater world community. And Fico Ferrer is a U.S. Coast Guard veteran who was born in Panama, raised in Puerto Rico, and moved to Pennsylvania in 2007. He is the father of Ana and Jose and grandfather of Adrian. He became vegan in 2015 after watching Cowspiracy. His vegan journey has improved his health, expanded his palate, and increased his social awareness. And Lauren Evans is a public relations professional who lives in Old City and has been vegan for 4 years. She was inspired to go vegan while interning for the Humane League and learning more about factory farming and where our food comes from. She's passionate about animal rights, environmentalism, and immigration rights. Lauren is also a loving dog mom and devoted aunt. So please give them all a warm welcome. So I guess the first question is, tell us about yourselves, your background, and when you went vegan and why.
Okay, great. Hello again, everyone. My name is Halana. I am a Philadelphia transplant. I'm originally from Ohio, but I've lived all over the world. And yeah, everything you said earlier was correct. My kind of lifestyle choice includes plant-based eating for health reasons, and incorporating yoga and meditation and aromatherapy and massage and all of these other components has been what I found to be kind of like the magic click in some ways for me, and for a lot of the folks that I work with. I became vegan, like 8 years ago, maybe, something like that. And it was definitely for health reasons for me. And then I kind of found out about the rest of the, kind of reinforcements and reasons why I wanted to consider plant-based eating well afterwards. But initially it was because I had done quite a bit of research and had a really big health scare and actually was getting ready to have a huge surgery. And I was very young and I was freaking out because they were like, oh my God, you may not be able to have children. I mean, there was this like scary tactic, and real risk. And I burst into tears, and there was a nurse that happened to be there as I was filling out all of those like waiver forms and stuff that you signed, and she was like, you can heal yourself from this, right? And I was like, what? I'd never in my life heard of anything. In my community, that's not something people are talking about. I'd never seen anybody that I knew that healed themselves from anything, so it was total foreign concept to me, and she kind of gave me this like very basic lifestyle outline: get more rest, drink more water, eat more fruits and vegetables, stress less, like all of the different things. And so at the time I was moving abroad again for work, and I took all of those suggestions and I did them, and I came back for checkup after checkup after checkup, and everything cleared up 100%. I was completely convinced at that point. So that's basically kind of like my origin story, and then everything continues to go from there. I've studied Ayurvedic medicine. I'm a massage therapist as well. I've been teaching yoga since 2005. Meditation is a big practice for me. In addition, aromatherapy kind of stacked on top of that, understanding how nature plays a role. So I really focus on helping people to de-stress and using plant-based lifestyle, yoga, and meditation as a way to kind of come back to yourself, because one of the things that's so prevalent in our communities is stress, and then when we stress, we eat, and then you know what I mean? It's kind of a thing that goes hand in hand. So that's a little bit about kind of how I became plant-based and vegan, and a little bit about what I do now.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
My story's a little bit different. I didn't come from a place of any sort of peril that led me to this lifestyle, but I guess for me, nutrition and food was always a sideline thing that I was always paying attention to, thinking at every stage of life I was eating in a way that was best for me, but with a completely different philosophy toward food, though. One that I look at it now and think, well, that didn't even make any sense. Thinking that, whatever I'm putting in my body, I can fix it by exercising and running, that sort of thing. It wasn't a give and take thing I've learned. But I do at least find some satisfaction in the fact that I was always searching for something. And even when we were little, I still hear my mother, eat your green vegetables, all the influence there. So we ate well for what we thought was going on at that point. But things changed for me gradually in my 20s. I discovered on my own that I had issues with dairy and started leaving that alone back when this was in my teaching days. I come from education. I used to teach elementary school. But I remember leaving that alone and colleagues teasing me about this rice milk that I was putting in my cereal in those days and different foods I was eating. But I think the thing that changed the most for me, or at least made me understand how I wanted to feel, was back in 2003. I did something called the Master Cleanse. Now, I'm not recommending that for people. It's a pretty extreme fasting cleansing program that you go through. And I did it for about 14 days, but I remember waking up on day 2, actually day 3. Day 2 I couldn't wake up, I was just sleeping the whole time. It knocked me out. But on day 3 I woke up at 6 a.m. with clarity and energy, and I just wanted to go out and just do. And I remember thinking, I want to feel like this, always. So I guess since then, I was always sort of chasing that high, trying to figure out what was this. And with that cleanse back then, when you break the cleanse, you try to introduce organic foods. That's when I started learning more about organic foods and juices, and a gradual return to, I guess, solid food. But at that point, the way I was eating, my return was eventually going back to cheesesteaks and pizza and all kinds of nutty stuff. But through that process of repeating this cleanse, and returning to food, I learned then certain foods that were making me feel different ways. And I didn't know there was a thing called gluten-free back then, but I knew what foods I had to avoid so that my mind wasn't getting cloudy, I wasn't feeling the chaos, I wasn't sluggish all the time, and it really affected my moods. So from there, I thought logically at that point, even knowing, well, this is silly to be doing this cleansing and then bouncing back and forth, but I knew that I would be reading and learning and discovering and meeting people and filling in these voids where there was an absence of what I didn't want to eat, and I'd learn what I should be eating and how to care for myself. So when you're open to new things, you sort of find that everywhere you go, there's something that's happening that's about it. So I was just pulling in information. Truthfully, where I am now is like what I call myself as a whole food, plant-based lifestyler with an ever-increasing sensitivity and sensibility towards vegan lifestyle. Because I am surrounded by vegans everywhere I go. I got into wanting to work with organizing events and working online with helping people and learning about what they're doing with their food and trying to help friends and others around. So I found myself in a place suddenly where it's like, wow, I'm right in the middle of this movement and I'm enjoying it. It blends in so well with the way I live and the way I want to live. It's been 6 years that I've been completely whole food, plant-based. I can remember when that switchover came. It was January 2013. It's the last time I did the master cleanse, and I hadn't done it for a long time. And I purposely did it during that holiday season because I realized, well, this is the time I'm going to be tempted to eat things when I'm going places. People looked at me like I was nuts. Like, why are you doing this now with all this food here at this party? I said, that's exactly why I'm doing it. And when I came out of that cleanse, it was January, and the little bit of food I was eating that I didn't really want anymore was the cheese I used to sprinkle on some things. And I had myself believing back then that I needed to eat salmon like every 2 weeks or something. And I came out of that thing and thinking, I guess I'm done with that food. And that was the tail end of it. So it's brought me to where I am now. I'm still changing the way I eat because I'm finding now that, wow, my body wants some different things at different times, or I have different goals, and I'm knocking little problems out one by one. Nothing major, but just stuff that's there with an awareness that I didn't have before. So I hope that helps.
That's great. Rico?
Sure. I'm a grandpa and a U.S. Coast Guard veteran. And how did it start for me was by watching Cowspiracy, the documentary, because I had a lot of information of how the agro-animal industry is affecting our environment. And when you give me data, I cannot say, wow, that's not real. That cannot be. The UN has had this for years. It's coming again now, but it's always been there. It's just that the powers to be suppress that information. They feed us that pyramid of food that we have to eat, meat, we have to eat cheese and bread and stuff. And no. So once I changed, I actually went through a similar process, not as intense as yours, but it was a detox. And what happened to me during that detox was getting rid of sugars. And it was to your point earlier, Emmanuel, that you said, you have to cleanse yourself. Oh boy. So that process was interesting. It was like 2 weeks of headaches and stuff just because you are releasing your addiction to sugar. We have sugar in so much. They just feed us that. And when you watch some of these documentaries, there's a purpose. Because we like it, because it triggers things in our brain to like it even more and more. So I used to eat donuts every week. I needed to get a fix of donuts. I needed to get a fix of all kinds of sugars. I would have my Snickers moments halfway through the morning. So once I changed, that all went away. And I was talking to a couple of you that, now I see the donuts, I'm like, oh yeah, those are cute, but... And once I tried to put one in my mouth, I was like, oh my God, there's so much sugar in this. Okay, and let's say, I went to a birthday party, I had a cake, and I enjoyed it, but the next day I was like, what am I feeling here? It was a sugar hangover, and I hadn't had those ever. I'm like, wow. Anyway, it's a process, it's a journey. I'm not saying perfect, but it started even before going vegan 4 years ago. It started with awareness of different ways. Like I was marching for the GMO marches that we had in Philly, I think 10 years ago maybe, or sooner. Then I started doing other stuff, and it's just getting aware of things. Veganism was a natural transition and growth and evolution to that. And even with the first presentation that you got by Christian the other day, that even awakens you even more about how veganism is going to free you from the other structures that are meant to drive you to behave in a certain way. So it's all good. It's all good. And I think the one thing that I was hearing, I want my fried pork chop, and I want it now. Somebody said that, and I can totally relate to that because we crave the flavor and the texture. We don't necessarily want it because it's pork. because it's an animal. It's just it's experience, right? So what we do is we can look for that in other foods. Like we have, these excellent cauliflower buffalo thingies, which are excellent. And like that, we have to experiment and allow ourselves to enjoy.
Lauren, you want to say a couple words?
Sure. So I'll be brief, but I was living in Virginia at the time, like got an internship in Philly that I needed I was studying public relations and nonprofit management. For those of you who don't know, the Humane League is a really great organization that does a lot of animal advocacy work. And I was interning there, and I think I packed like a deli sandwich on the first day, and I was sitting there eating, and everyone was like, what are you doing? And I was like, it's like organic turkey, it's fine. And, I just was very unaware, and I feel really lucky that I was surrounded by so many patient people at that internship, and just girls would bring in their lunches and things and be like, do you want to try a bite of this? It's really good. Just seeing how flavorful vegan food could be. Mm. And I thought I was being healthy. I thought I was choosing all organic things and, trying to get my eggs from this one person down. But it was just, I was misinformed. And yeah, I think that was a really overwhelming part of it too, is because I was in college, I was trying to be self-aware, and I felt like these things were still hidden from me. And so once then I, learned more about where our food comes from in factory farming, and I was like, why did this never come up in school? Why do we never learn about this stuff? I have to go so out of my way to learn about it. And then I kind of felt like that was in my control. Now it's on me, and echoing kind of what Fico said, I'm a big data nerd. So if you put the data out there, that sticks with me. That's makes an impression on me. So, yeah.
That's great. Okay, so I guess the next question would be, what reactions did you get from your family, and how did you handle that dynamic? Maybe a couple of sentences.
Yeah, sure. So nobody in my family is vegan. Yeah, and I wanted to comment on something that I feel like was floating a little bit. I always say I gave up meat but not flavor, and a lot of people, when they try my food, I'm actually also working on a recipe book. It's soups and salads and smoothie recipes to help folks transitioning, just a little mini ebook as I'm working on a larger book, or a larger recipe book. And it's so interesting because I would bring my own food with me where I went, whether it was packing my lunch to go to work or just having snacks in my bag because plant-based food was so expensive, right? I always say I think it's a little easier now to transition. I know it's still tough emotionally, because we have these connections to our food, but I feel as far as options-wise, there's a bajillion options out there now. And I remember going to the real crunchy kind of, it was, well, I'm from Ohio, there was a store called Raisin Rack. I mean, that was the name of it. And that was the only place you could go to get a veggie burger or something. It was very limited, and the flavors in those foods were not always what I was used to, right? So I started to really just take recipes that my mom used to always make, and I would veganize them. And that's kind of the basis for my recipe book that I'm working on now. So I think the flavor thing is a really big deal. I think it matters. I think people try food that tastes good. It opens up a possibility. It opens up oh, I didn't know this could happen. I didn't know we could mix this and match this and remix this. And so I love the creativity that is happening now with plant-based food. I think it makes it so accessible to people. It makes it something that you're not afraid to try. And for me, my family, they were chill about it, but they had their little snarky remarks you want to eat some of this barbecue chicken wings, And I'd be like, no, I don't. Yes, it smells great. No, I don't want to eat any of it. Leave me alone, And for a time period, because I did a lot of catering too, I have a long history in the health and wellness space, as you said, but I was doing catering at the time, and so I remember I was dating this guy, and I had an order come through to do shrimp kebabs and little burgers and different things like that. And he was like, are you gonna really make that food for those people? And I was like, yes, I'm gonna make that food. First of all, it's paying me. And second of all, what am I gonna shame these people for wanting to order? I feel like there's just a lot of things that were going on. And so for me, I always use those opportunities to educate folks and just share my lifestyle, not in a way that I'm everybody is bad and you need to do this thing, but you look at the data, you look at how you feel, you know, you really sit with yourself and you listen, you find space to tune in, and you can see what works for you. And everything isn't for everybody, but there's a lot of options and there's a lot of positive possibilities. So for me, my family was just kind of like, okay, Helana, you still doing that vegan thing? And I was like, yes, it's not a thing, it's a whole, you know, it's a whole shift. And then I would start making the dishes that they loved, but with plant-based alternatives. And then I would bring these dishes to our family gatherings, and all of my food would get eaten first. And all of this chicken and pork and whatever else would be sitting off on the sides. And I would always be like, why are you guys eating my food? Don't you guys want this? And they're like, oh, this is really good. Let me just taste a little bit of this and this and this. And so, you know, family can be tough. There is, you know, a lot of old school traditions and a lot of emotion, a lot of heart in the food that we make and our cultures and our family, our recipes, everything from pierogies to apple pie, you know, we care about it. And food in my family has always been about love. So it's like, well, I made this for you, you're not gonna eat it, you know? And I remember I had this conversation with my mom once, and it was something that she had made, and I was like, Mom, I can't eat that. And she was like, why? You ate it when you were little? Like, why can't you eat this? And we, you know, and I realized for her it was like, you're my baby, I wanna care for you. This is the food I've always given you to take care of you. How can you tell me what I've given you doesn't nurture you properly now that you've changed or whatever? And so I had to really like let her process that and let me process that and approach it with patience and like lots of gentleness, you know, and just be like, yeah, Mom, you know, it doesn't change my love for you. It doesn't change our relationship. It's just, this is what I'm doing. And so now she does these little 30-day vegan things with me, and she's super into it, and we cook together, and she makes it her way, I make it my way, and she wants to make a frittata, she makes it, and I'll make a whatever, you know, other version. But I think family can be very helpful if we approach it with a way of patience and open-mindedness, and I think that can definitely attract and reflect. So
That's great. Anyone have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
You pretty much.
I'm glad that you mentioned the conversations with the patients you had with your mother. Because, you know, I think the hardest thing for a mother has got to be the realization that your child might be saying everything you did for me was harming me rather than helping me. But I like that. For me, I'll be brief. Luckily, my brother's here somewhere. Luckily, we've always had a similar food curiosity. Now, this is the guy he also eats the lifestyle now too, but I remember there was a point, I can remember he used to live on like blueberry pancakes and milkshakes. And from certain spots in Philly, and that would be my time when I was always more on the savory side. He was always more on the rich, sweet side of things. But it's been great to have that support, knowing that we both can, you know, look for the same things, or you know, hold our line together when the family's you know, ribbing us and attacking us. The hardest time, our family's not rough about it, but you know, we're one of those families that will always gather for birthdays and we go somewhere to eat. We never get to pick where we're going, but they'll say, well, what about Bruce and Richard? Now they're at the point where they know we'll work it out, but they joke about it. But as far as family's concerned, on the positive side, I have members that call me about stuff. Hey, I'm thinking about this, or this is happening.
Yep.
And I'll say my extended family also, friends who they want to tell me what they're doing and the changes they've made and what they're realizing. You know, sometimes I'll say, well, I told you that 10 years ago and you could have, and then I understand. You've got to learn it on your own. It's a process, it's a journey, and I'm glad you're where you are. And I want them to speed up because I don't want to see them going through the things that they're experiencing. But if family is supportive, and now it's different, they don't worry about us, they will ask, what do you want, but they know I'll always show up with my stuff and perhaps cook.
And I guess another question that ties into this, and maybe Fico and Lauren, you could chime into this, is how do you handle holiday meals, right? Or just events in general where there's going to be food involved. How do you handle in general?
So I was the master pork shoulder seasoner in my family. Coming from Puerto Rico, pork was big, and they always expected me to come and just season that big piece of meat. And then it came to a point and said, you know, I can't. But instead, I brought my own stuff, and they said, oh, this is good. So that was the breaking into that, the patterns that were there. But overall, my family has been very supportive in that sense. So yeah, I could have a whole lot of stories, but maybe you have something.
I think my family was definitely concerned at first of like if I was getting enough protein. I had a lot of health issues at the time, and they were like, this is not what the doctor's saying. And I was like, I really just, was into the research I was reading and was adamant about trying this. So I felt like they were a little unsupportive at first, and you get teased, and not like, with love, like, like exactly like, yeah, do you want this steak? And it's like, haha, I'm good, thanks. Like, but now I'm actually at a point, so I've been, just making my own vegan dishes, bringing them to family events for years. And my family recently watched What the Health. And I think that was like what clicked for them, that like, oh my God, like I feel like I've been tricked, like this is about my health too. So they've actually, a couple of them have gone plant-based now, and they're like, I'm so excited for the next like Easter, Thanksgiving, whatever, to come up and see how it is. So it took some years, but be patient, and not that you have to go get your family to go plant-based too, but expect the concerns and questions, and they're your family, they care about you. Yeah.
And I guess if you are able to veganize the recipes that you and your family loves, they would be surprised, and you would be surprised how happy they'd be to eat it if it tastes good. Because like we mentioned here, the texture and the flavor doesn't have to be out of the picture. Just, the animal products part. So if you can replicate that, and there's plenty of resources online too for, if you want to look up any kind of recipe and put vegan before that, you'll get a vegan version, right?
Farah, may I add something there?
Yes, please.
I'll be quick. My favorite holiday was always Thanksgiving. And that was a lot based on the food, but also just the fact that our family, we have a large traveling Thanksgiving that we would do ever since we were children. So it was the favorite time. And I remember dealing with that, like, how am I going to work with Thanksgiving? For a while, I used to just I'd wait for my cousin to cut the oyster out of the turkey, and that's all I would eat sometimes that day. I'd eat that. My responsibility was always the Caesar salad. And that's a crazy salad if you're a vegan or a whole food plant-based person, because you've got fish in there, you've got eggs, you've got all cheese, all the things you don't want. And people would wait for that Caesar to come. But what I did was I started gradually changing it. There was a point where I'd make two until I felt that I could get the vegan version to where they wouldn't know the difference. And I had my one little cousin who was always my taster, my brother would be a taster. And it got to the point where the last time I did it, they couldn't tell the difference, and they enjoyed it. Let them know there were nuts in there, but
that's wonderful.
yeah, so that's it.
And since we're a little bit short in time, we'll try to get through as many questions as we can, but we'll try to maybe keep the answers relatively short, because we have about 5 more minutes left. But I guess the next question would be how to deal with being vegan in a work environment, right? So, what are the challenges, if there are any challenges that you faced as a vegan in your work environment? Do you have any suggestions, recommendations?
I worked in DC in corporate for a long time. Before I fully transitioned to entrepreneurship, and so when you're an entrepreneur, you can eat whatever you want. You can pick places you meet people for tea or coffee or whatever, and kind of do your thing. For me, at workplaces, it was so awkward. Like, we do the big holiday corporate gala thing, and it'd be like, oh God, just anything you can imagine. And I always had to kind of be like, like slide it to the secretary, like, hey, can you make sure that they put something in there that's gonna be vegan? But then, even then, vegan in these, and it always blew my mind how these big, huge, expensive restaurants, I couldn't fathom the idea of not putting butter or not putting cream or not putting cheese and all of these different things in their foods. And I was like, these chefs, like, they're immaculate chefs from around the world, and they don't understand the concept of like a rice pilaf with steamed vegetables and
So how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I would always advocate for myself. Even if it was awkward, even if there would be a row of steak dinners and mashed potatoes, and then I would be sitting there with a double salad, right? And because the salad would be like this big, and I'd be like, can I get like 3 of those, And I'd be sitting there with a acorn squash stuffed whatever, So I always advocate for myself, and don't be afraid to stand out. Yeah, that's what I would say with the workspace. People are gonna look at you funny, whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like now there's so many options too. Like I travel a lot with conferences, and whether I'm like, flying somewhere, I can always like request a vegan option. I can request a vegan option at the conference or at an event I'm at, and I just make sure that I like ping a wait staff person when I get there that's like serving me to be like, hey, I requested this. Will you make sure? Because you're gonna get so lost in a sea of people. But just like tip off whoever your wait staff is. But I feel like it's usually pretty accessible nowadays. We're lucky.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can help to actually have a bite to eat before you go to these events, so you make sure that you're not starving when you get there and all you have is maybe a small salad. So if you're able to prepare in advance and kind of know that you're going to be in an environment where there might not be that much food for you, eating or even just carrying some snacks with you can
Carry
really
Lara bars.
help. Yeah, Lara bars or some nuts if you can have nuts. Something just to get you by, right? Would you agree?
Yes.
Yep.
And that takes me to the next question, which is how do you, when you travel, how do you make sure that you can find vegan food? I know there's some resources like Happy Cow is an app and a website where you can be in a country or a city and find what are the vegan options that are close. So I'm assuming a lot of you also have used that app.
All the time.
But sometimes it could take some preparation and planning. But what are your
So
thoughts?
I'm going to chime in. I travel a lot for work, and at first I was in panic because my first place was McPherson, Kansas. Once I went vegan, I'm like, oh my God, no. Anyway, you Google and find places, and you'll find food. And when you're at a restaurant, like you said, ask the waiter, ask the chef. They will most likely cater to you, and they will offer ideas. So there's always an opportunity.
You find the chefs are sometimes excited about.
Yes.
They're excited about
challenge.
making something for you because they're making the same food over and over and over again. And a lot of them like to do what they were trained to do, which is create.
Yeah.
But I definitely mirror what both of you said about the workplace and about the challenges for traveling. Luckily, I've been able to start traveling a little bit more lately. But when I travel, my goal is to find and eat as much vegan food as I can.
Yeah.
So I would love to live a life of just traveling, finding vegan places, talking about them, and then just moving on to the next ones. And the people who own the places that are really good when I travel, they see me every day.
Right.
I'll bang out maybe 30 entrees in a short period of time. Because I want to taste everything they have on the menu, and I stay in touch with them.
And so sometimes it also helps to research in the city where you're going. Where are the vegan places? YouTube videos, Google searches, and also to maybe sometimes plan ahead, have some snacks when you're on the road or you're traveling, so you're not out of options before you get hungry.
I
Right?
carry bananas everywhere I go, so that I'm
To add to that, there are lots of like ethnic cuisines that are naturally vegan that are really good to stick with that you can find in almost any city. Like we just got back from California. Mexican food, amazing. Nopales tacos, mushroom there's so many different things you can have. Ethiopian food most of the time is naturally vegan if you get a veggie platter.
Thai food, Indian
Thai
food, those curries.
So many options. So sometimes if you go with restaurants that are really good in that city, like if you Google an Indian restaurant, they're gonna have something that you can eat. So that's another back pocket tip.
Thank you so much for that. Yes.
Yes.
Wasn't this wonderful? Are you all happy that they were able to do it? Yes. Big thank you for giving us your time and sharing all of your knowledge with us. We're out of time, unfortunately, because I know a lot of you have to go, and I know some of you have to hit the road soon. But yes, thank you.
Thank you for having
all.
us.
Thank you.